Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session on using Flint for research and library purposes. I know this is like a more niche topic, but glad that there's a lot of people who are interested. And I know that AI for research can be very powerful for students. So excited to share my thoughts and things that I've heard about this. And also we have a bunch of teachers who have agreed to share what they've done as well. Anyone here who wants to share at the end is also welcome to. I'll try and speed through the slides at the front so that we have more time for that at the end. But yeah, to start off, agenda today kind of looks like I'll very briefly cover some icebreaking news, as I call it. You know, news about AI that I think is worth discussing a little bit. And then I'll run through the features in Flint that really enable it to help students do good research. And then I'll go through some examples of activities and chats, and then I'll move on to the shareout. And in between these, we'll have time for questions, but feel free to pause me at any time if you have a urgent question or throw it in the chat and I'll try to answer it intermittently. But yeah, recording will be available later. Questions are welcome. And we'll just go ahead and get started. All right, so for the icebreaking news for today, I saw this article from Inside Higher Ed describing how publishers are starting to embrace AI as a research integrity tool. It was very interesting that they said that they are increasingly turning to AI to speed up production and also try to enhance research quality. So they're using a lot of AI-powered tools to help aid scientists in research, writing, and also peer review. Yeah, I just thought it was a very interesting article because so much of like peer review and writing, a lot of people take ownership in that. But yeah, I'm glad that they're using AI to try and get ahead of the curve at least of having issues with, plagiarism even in the professional world and having too much AI generated content getting put out there without much critical thinking. Yeah, any thoughts on this? I know I've like only just touched the iceberg on that article. It'll be in the slides if you all want to read it though. Ooh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that even in like the professional world, research is heavily leading into AI. So it feels even more important to be teaching our students these skills. So features for research within Flint include content upload. So I usually encourage educators here to add your own content, kind of point Flint in the right direction. You can give it, like, for example, a list of books from your library collection. I know this is one example that we'll have a teacher share out later. You can point it towards like specific resources that you want it to cover with students. This is a way of like getting AI to try and hallucinate less at least, and making sure that it has access to reliable data and insights so that it can share those with the students. Flink can also search the web, so you can request that within activities or chats that you're having with it so that it gets the most up-to-date information on a topic. And also, you can even ask it, for example, to get varying sources on a topic if you want to have the different perspectives. Yeah, and then for citations, there's two things here. So Flint will link to sources that it pulls information from. I'll show you an example of this in a little bit. But yeah, definitely tell the students to check these sources that Flint is sharing with them. Show them how, like, if there's a little number in blue, that means that there's a source that they can look at. And then for the flip side of this, for citing things that Flint tells students, Flint has built-in APA, MLA, and Chicago-style citations, though I do know that a lot of schools are also creating their own guidelines for this. For example, here's one from a school that we're working with in Atlanta, and they have like this whole guide available for you all to read through after the session as well, where they have kind of given guidelines to the students on how they should be citing AI and how they can, like get the public links and then include that in their work so that it's something that's accessible to other people reviewing their work. Okay. Yeah, so I kind of sped through those. I'll share what they actually look like in the platform in this section. But any questions so far?
I suppose I do.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So when you mention uploading things into Flint so that it does not hallucinate, I suppose my biggest concern is copyright concerns. So, is this whatever that, someone would to load into Flint, for instance,
Mhm.
does that live only within the Flint ecosystem, or is this something that we are against perhaps the desired wishes of the author loading and launching into like the greater generative AI ecosystem without perhaps permission?
Yeah, thanks, John. That's a really good question. So we at Flint don't train any models, and we pay AI model providers that we use more money so that they don't take any of the data that we put into Flint and use it for their training. So both in terms of like copyright concerns and student privacy concerns, that's how we address that. We pay them more money so that they don't use it basically, and we personally don't use it either. The only thing that I would say to be careful of is if you're creating a Flint activity and you want to publish it as a template, then just kind of think about how like if you do publish it to the wider like community Flint template, there might be some like concerns with like if you're taking like a textbook that your school has paid for, but then maybe other schools haven't and sharing it there. So but we do have like a little warning message there, just like letting people know like, hey, this and like everything in the settings will be available to everyone who uses Flint. Cool. So I did want to share a couple of examples of chats with you. So within Flint, there's two different things if you all haven't seen. We have chats and we have activities. Chats are kind of like you're interacting with ChatGPT, but you have all of the extra Flint perks on top. So you, as an educator, or students themselves, can interact and get, basic information as a starting point for research, help for find research questions, suggest additional topics and approaches, and then uh, but then on like the flip side, Flint activities can be trained with specific guidelines and content. So it's kind of like you're training a bot, whereas the chat is like you're talking to a general bot that doesn't have specific guidelines set in it. Hopefully that makes sense. I will share examples of both so that you guys can see how that works. But yeah, so let me come over to the platform. So yeah, within Flint, we have the chats where you can interact with Flint on your own. There's a teacher point of view, and then you can also click on this to see the student's point of view and get the tools that they have available to them. And then you can also create activities. This I'll walk through in a little bit, where you can really design like the persona of the AI, how it should be interacting with students, give it some guidelines on how to assess them. So this is more of like a little teaching assistant, as we like to compare it, that you share with your students, and then they'll go through that experience that you've designed. But yeah, let me show you a couple examples of chats that I think are relevant for research. So here I just went off with the very basic one of creating a lesson plan. And I know in the registration, a lot of people were wondering about how to teach students about responsible AI use and information literacy skills and critical thinking, especially with AI in mind. So here I'm asking Flint to help brainstorm that with me. And yeah, this is something that you can do also and incorporate more details about how you want to approach this at your school, what sorts of policies your schools might have. So here it created a very like generalized lesson plan, but I think it incorporated a lot of interesting things. For example, there's like the activity of talking to students about AI in their lives, especially since I said it for like a fourth grade level. That's like really um, relating to the students and their own experiences. And then this one was interesting. The second activity that it's suggesting here is to have students spot the bot. So see if they can critically think about all of the information that they're seeing and like what looks to be like something that they might want to double check because it might be AI generated and what might be more written by a human, and if they can see what clues help them decide which is which. But yeah, and then I like created this mnemonic for information detective skills, as it said. And yeah, it's just great for coming up with a bunch of ideas here. And then in this example, I asked it to lower the reading level of a text for the students. And so here it's asking me to share what grade level, ninth grade, and then I shared this NPR article with them. So this is about the new Canadian Prime Minister. And yeah, so Flint was able to take the content from that website and then put it in a new document with like a leveled sort of reading experience for ninth graders. And then even when I asked it to make it for third grade as well, it was able to do that also within the same chat. And it's like a bit more engaging, a bit more simplified for the students. Yeah, so that's also kind of how the level reading tool looks. And then finally, this is an example from the student perspective. So if the students ask Flint to help them research a topic, it can help them do that very easily. So here I said, like, I want to learn about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and it gave me a very comprehensive overview. Here's where you can see, like, it's starting to cite things in the text. Yeah, and then it'll, like, show you where it's grabbing this information, and it should have a link to it as well. Oh, I think it's giving it from one of the other ones here. But yeah, so that's how you can see like where the broader ideas from Flint are coming from. And then if the students want to cite this information that Flint is providing them, they can just click cite message, and here's all of the different citations that they can include in their work. Yeah, of course, let them know like how this all is formatted, and so they know how to best incorporate that into their research papers. But yeah, that's kind of how it can look from the student perspective as well. So you're giving them a tool that has additional abilities built into it and also knows that they're a student and that they're trying to learn. Okay. Any?
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So when the kids are citing the sources, are people having them put that directly in something like Noodle tools, or are they generating their own document?
Yeah. Depends on the school. The example with the citation guide that I showed you earlier, they also use Noodle tools actually, so they're using both in conjunction. So you can definitely have both, or sometimes the students are just copying that citation directly and putting it into like the works cited at the end of their papers.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about chats or student use there?
I had a question.
Mhm.
I was just going back to the to when you were clicking on the footnote on the numbers to find the sources. I was wondering if you prompted it to if you prompted in the Flint to explicitly list the sources used in the previous response, would it do that?
Yes, it should. I need to. Yesterday when I looked at this, it had the links for some reason, but today it is not letting me scroll to it. But typically, let me find another example. Typically, it will give you the link to where it's grabbing that information from.
Yeah.
So I believe this example should have it. So yeah, here is what it normally looks like. I don't know if it's broken right now. I'll double check with the engineers. But yeah, normally it will give you like the little excerpt, and then it will also provide the link that you can click on. And then here, like students can come to this link. Hopefully it's, they're not ad blocked, I guess. But see like, oh, this is a CVS link. This is probably something that I can use.
I was actually using it the other day, and I ran into the same thing, and I just asked them in the session, where did you get this information? And it spit out a whole bunch of citations for me.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, that's and I think that's really great. I really like that feature in Flint because, you know, pedagogically, it's still important for students to understand tracing sources and where information is coming from. So if that is built into the system, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll double check with the engineers what's going on there. I think something may have been updated and it lost like the link, but typically it should be showing you the link as well. Yes. Yeah, Silky?
Oh, I had a question about the file size because like earlier when I was like curating resources for the kids to research, there was a problem like I was not able to upload like multiple resources and it was just like getting stuck. Like my entire prompt was there, but like file was not getting uploaded. I tried to compress the PDF. I did like all sorts of things, but ultimately it did not happen because I wanted to put it on my libguide, but it didn't work for me.
I see. Yeah. Sorry to hear about that. I do know that we recently kind of changed that it can read sources that you upload. So the current um, limitation is 100 pages double spaced, but you can upload up to 16 or so of those sorts of larger files. If you're running into issues with the amount, sometimes I've seen people like break up the files into like multiple ones and then you can upload it. But I do think that it's something that our team should work on. Basically, before we allowed much larger uploads, but then AI only has so much memory, so it couldn't reliably search through everything, and it would just summarize and use that summary. But now it does actually, it is able to actually search through everything, so that's why we opted for that instead. But it does result in a more tight like limitation there. Yeah, but something we're hoping to improve soon. And also as AI models get better, they can remember more and hopefully it'll expand.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Gwen?
Hi, I guess I have two questions thinking about students doing, like, say, a research paper, maybe in high school. One of those maybe is a little simpler, like a lot of times if students have used an online news article or website or whatever, we would ask them in their citations to include the URL. And there have been times as a librarian or a teacher where I think the student hasn't really understood the main point, and I often will click on that URL to go back and see, am I seeing that same idea represented there? But I wonder if they are getting information from like a Flint kind of overview on a topic, and they are using Flint's MLA citation of this chat or whatever. Is there any way for the student to, I guess that there's probably not a way for them to like directly link to the text of that chat for their teacher to see, or are they able to share it with the teacher, like
Yeah.
as part of the school community or something, so that a teacher could kind of go back and retrace their steps or co-browse, co-read it with them a little bit down the line?
Yeah, so actually within the citation it has a link to the session. So as long as you're a part of that school in Flint, you'll be able to see it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. The other question I had, I'm wondering, a lot of my high school students will need to access peer-reviewed journal articles in databases like, ProQuest or things like that. And I'm wondering if Flint has any way of conducting any kind of unified searches of those. I did some like practice like research, and I asked, what are some good sources, and it gave me a bibliography of some suggested articles about my pretend topic. But then, one of the things that sometimes students have the most trouble with is actually then getting their hands on that article. And I was wondering, is there any way that Flint, if your institution has a subscription to a database like ProQuest, can you provide a way in for Flint to help students conduct database researches, or where it can tell them like, well, why don't you start with JSTOR? This is probably in JSTOR. Like, I'm wondering,
I see.
for sources that are not freely available on the internet, but that your institution does have access to. Is there any current tool, or do you think that there's anything in the works that might lead that way, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. Unfortunately, right now, I don't think it would work super well. Flint doesn't like the people with those databases don't necessarily make it public, like what all of the things that they contain in their database. So then Flint also doesn't have access to that. But what you could do is when you create an activity, you can put in like all of the database resources that you as a school have access to, so that Flint knows to suggest to students like, hey, I know you're interested in this topic, maybe check out your school's database. Yeah, and I've seen some teachers create like keyword practice activities. So even if it's not able to direct students like directly to a link within the database, the activity could be helping students figure out what exactly they can search for in order to get the topics that they want to cover. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Kevin, go ahead.
I kind of showed a little bit of this, but I'm just thinking back to kind of the early direction of Flint and wondering about, using it as a teaching tool. I think you're looking at right now, looking at as a research tool, but what about, are you, maybe you'll show this, and that's, sorry if I'm asking this now, but how might this be used as a research teaching tool, right? So we're looking at, here's some resources. Can you evaluate the accuracy of these resources? And then it will, give the teacher a sense for what their critical thinking skills they're using, in this research. There's just so many things you could do with that kind of as a teaching or even an assessment tool, right? Rather than just a research tool.
For sure. Actually, that's a great segue. I was just about to dive into activities. Really quickly though, John, did you also have a question?
No, it was mostly just building on what Gwen was asking. I'm at the Kincaid School, and we've been using Flint for a little while. And one of the things that, especially my coworker, I don't know if she's on this call right now, has been doing is utilizing Flint as sort of a place to, depending on the assignments that teachers come to us to partner with, creating sort of banks of keywords and teaching students how to create those sort of banks of keywords to use as tools as they're going through our proprietary databases to sort of help narrow the search. So in other words, it's not raking the data for them, but it's helping them refine their keywords in a way that's more sophisticated than perhaps they would be able to generate by themselves. And that has, insofar as I know, has shown to be really effective. So even though you're not pulling the data in the same like sort of easy way that you would with open source materials, it's making the search process that much faster and more sort of more refined. And I don't know about y'all's kids, but our kids are exceptionally stretched for time. So I know anything that you can launch to them as a time saving device is a huge help. That's all I wanted to say. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you, John. Thank you. Yeah, you might have been talking about Claire Osborne.
I was actually talking about Daisy. No, she's
Oh.
she's the digital services librarian here, but Claire also, I think, is doing that in the middle school. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. There's a lot of people at Kincaid who are doing awesome work. But yeah, that's awesome. Great, yeah. Hopefully we'll get to the teacher trail. I know some people wanted to talk about those kinds of use cases as well, but I did really quickly want to show you some examples of activities. So within Flint, again, if you're in the homepage, you can scroll down to this activity section and create custom teaching tools or teaching experiences for students. So here I'm going to create a custom activity, and then it's going to ask me what I want to create. So here I'm just going to put in help grade 8 students explain and refine their research questions and sub-questions. I want the students to come up with their own explanation. I want you to ask them thoughtful questions about how they explain their research question. And this is actually something that was suggested, or something that a teacher had actually come to me with in terms of an activity that they wanted to build out. So she shared with me this document with, once it loads, I can show you, with like the research activity or specific like the goal that she had set for the students and like the guidelines that she had given them. So yeah, I've uploaded this document into Flint that kind of is basically what she shared with the students as well, so that Flint has that context on what the students are doing. So like here's like the overall query, and then she had written out like how to justify the research questions, explain the role of sub questions, and connect everything to the overall inquiry. There's like key terms in there and also an explanation sample. So I'm giving this to Flint as like a resource of this is what the students know and this is what I want them to be able to do. And that's why in the prompt I'm saying, yeah, help them refine the research questions and sub-questions. And then I'm also saying that I want it to ask them questions, whereas the students are coming up with their own explanation. So if I send that there, Flint will help me start brainstorming how this might look. And like, this is this is kind of like a niche example of an activity, but like Kevin was kind of touching on earlier, there's a lot of different things that you can do with these sorts of activities. Hopefully a lot of which we'll touch on in the share out section, but yeah, anything that you might hand to a teaching assistant, let's say, to walk students through or explain to them or help them with, or even like another librarian, a fellow librarian who has like a lot of knowledge and resource about the world, you can do within activities with Flint. But yeah, here it has created the activity for me. It's a research question explorer. It'll show you all of the different settings that it's written up here. And yeah, we're trying to make it so that educators don't have to learn the prompt engineering. They don't have to write all of this on their own. Flint will do it for you. And then your role is more so to evaluate what it has put out, kind of similar to how we ask students to, evaluate what AI's output is. Here I'm also tasking you all with evaluating what it's creating for us here. So yeah, within the overview, it's like saying how it will work, but really the key thing here is to preview it and try it out in the mindset of a student. So here you can simulate a preview at different levels. So if I click proficient, it will start to play out the conversation as a proficient student submission. So here it's like showing me what role it would play, how the students might respond, and you get a really quick sense of how this activity is going to play out. Yeah, and then I would also suggest trying it out manually, pretend to be like a really struggling student and a student who's like really excelling, and then that should give you a good idea of all of the different things that this activity might cover. And then, yeah, when you're finding something new that you want to change about the activity, you can just request it in here. For example, I'm going to say like, make sure you ask students to produce an explanation of the research questions, sub-questions at the end. Make sure they follow the structure of the example given and do not rate this for them. Do not give them suggestions on how to word their writing either. You do have to be very explicit with Flint about how helpful you want it to be because, it's an AI. It was created to help people write. So it often does a little bit more than we want it to. So I'm just putting all of that in there. And then that's kind of how you can go back and forth and make edits to this experience. Yeah. And then once you're happy with it, you can create the activity, share the link with students, and yeah, that's how you can create these sorts of activity experiences that students can interact with. Okay, any questions about activities? Oh wait, not this slide, this one. Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
I have a question about that because I tried to use that and I actually found, and this was, I would say almost a month ago, so I don't know if things have changed since then, but I found that sometimes when I used that and I tried to prompt it to make such, put more guardrails in and change it, it then ended up changing the activity, parts of the activity that I really liked that it had created. And almost rewrote it in some ways that and so then I lost it. So I guess one of my questions is can you go back, and this may be there now, I'm not sure, but can you go back to previous versions of what it created? Because at the time it wasn't obvious to me how to do that, and full disclosure, I was pressed for time, so I kind of had to just go with what it gave me. But is there a way to look at previous things that it came up with, or a way to stop that from happening? Like tell it, please don't change anything that you've already done. This is what I want you to add to it in addition.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not like a surefire way to go back to previous versions. Currently, you could, if you still have like this long chat and you haven't like closed out and come back to it, then you could go back and tell it to like use the version that it first created, and it should have all of the information about that here. And just tell it to like revert in this chat here. But I would say if there's like one like very minuscule thing that you want to add, you could add it manually if you're like afraid of it changing. If there's like a lot that you already like and that you don't want it to change. So in the build manually, there are the options to, go into the very specific settings, and you can type in here and add different resources as well. Yeah, the only like reason that we don't typically suggest this to teachers is that sometimes there might be like a contradiction that doesn't look like a contradiction to us, if that makes sense. So you might be adding something that Flint can like understand on its own, but then in context with like all of the other things that it's written, it might like at one point it might say like help students with their analysis, but then you say don't analyze things for them, then it will like not really know how to behave, if that makes sense. So usually using the build with Flint, it will evaluate all of its settings, and that's why it rewrites a lot of it, for better or for worse. So yeah, just if you're using them manually, just like be careful about that. Okay, cool. And I had a couple tips for activity creation, most of which I've kind of already covered. Preview and iterate, upload examples and content. One thing to also do is like you can adjust the reading level for your students. Flint kind of has knowledge of what level a third grader reads at versus like a ninth grader. So you can say things like that. Or if you're teaching them in a language other than English, you can also give them like ACTFL and CFR levels. Yeah, and then in terms of ideas and prompts to tell Flint, I'm sure I could create like a giant list of this, but some of the key ones that teachers kind of have the, oh yeah, I can do that moments are telling it to be concise. AI is by default very wordy, so having it be more concise and like more directed can both help with, the issue of students being greeted with like a long, huge paragraph of text, but also the AI being a little too helpful sometimes. You want students to still be asking those thoughtful follow-up questions. So the conciseness can help there. Asking it to cite sources for all claims can be useful for the research context. It won't necessarily always do that, so that's something that you can request of it. And then an idea that I've seen some teachers use, especially as an introduction to students using AI for research, is to create an activity that gets things wrong to see if students will fact check it, to see if they can catch it. And also create like this sort of healthy skepticism around AI. But yeah, on the slide, also on the right-hand side, is a template that someone has created. If you haven't seen the templates in Flint, let me create this activity really quick. We do have like this section of a platform that has a lot of different templates that have been created by fellow educators. These are all free for you all to use and copy to your own workspaces, and then you can remix them, you can add to them, and kind of make them your own. So yeah, an open sharing community. This is kind of what I was touching on earlier, John, about like being careful about if you do upload copyrighted material into here. But yeah, yes, this template is an interesting one, helping students break down complex research questions. And then I also have like a couple more in these slides here. There's like an AI prompt coach teaching students how to prompt AI. And then this other Professor Ponder, who is helping them draft thesis statements. So there's some stuff that's already built out that you can try out in Flint, or of course you can build your own thing. Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
Hi, so when we are uploading content in an activity, is there a certain format for that content that is more easy for Flint to process than others?
Yeah, I would say PDFs are great. Word documents are great. If you're putting in like a Google Drive link, I would be careful because Flint doesn't have like a Google account, so it might need to be like something that's published to the web in order for it to see it. Yeah, but I would say like PDF, Word doc, CSV file, anything like that is really good.
If you add a video, would it be able to process that?
So we did have the ability to process YouTube videos, but recently YouTube changed its terms of service, so we're working with them to re-enable that. But hopefully that will also be back soon.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
I think you have a comment question, and I've asked a lot, so I'll defer for the moment.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Caroline's asking if you adjust the template to use change for us, or does it alter the public one? No, so it would only change for you, so no worries. You won't be accidentally overwriting someone's work there. Yeah, so this is also like a good way that we see even teachers within the same school sharing activities. If you're like a bit worried that your coworkers might overwrite what you're doing if you share an activity with them directly, you can create a template and then have them work off of that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're running a bit close on time, so I'm gonna speed through like the final ones and then get to the share out. But just a reminder that students can also create activities. So we've seen like in some of the high schools, the actual assignment is to create an activity, and the students have to like be mindful of how they're using AI and like prompting it to help themselves, you know. But yeah, it's better to use activities for recurring research compared to chats, so that students can kind of give it like more context on what they're doing, how they want the things that the AI is giving them to be formatted. So sometimes for research projects, especially that take place over a longer time, we see students creating activities or teachers prompting students to create activities. Great, okay. So for the share out, there's a couple teachers here who said they would come share in person. I also have some additional share outs from teachers who weren't able to make it to the live session. I've included all of this in the slides, and I'll very quickly walk through a little bit of it. Yeah, here's like a deck from Jane Wong from CISHK, and a couple things that she mentioned that I thought were interesting were that, well, for context, I guess, she's been using Flint with year 4 through 6 students, and yeah, they thought that it was essential first to have a class discussion about how to use AI tools responsibly and be a critical thinker. So I think especially as you're introducing AI, it's definitely good to like talk to students about like its limitations, what it can do, what you should be wary of it doing. Yeah, she said their students responded positively to Flint. And they also found it important for students to have brainstorming sessions in class before using Flint. This is, you know, for younger students, so they are like trying to, as a group, brainstorm how to ask really good questions. You might not necessarily need to do this for like high school students. But yeah, that's like how they've been using it. And yeah, and then Christopher from International School of Bangkok also shared some examples. I thought this one was really interesting. I'll like play this video for you really quickly. My laptop is freaking. Okay.
Really, first, I just want to say I really appreciate this opportunity to share some of the work that my teachers and I have been doing at International School Bangkok with Flint. We love it. We are excited to be using it with kids, and really just appreciate how tailored it is for our students. So it makes the job of creation and the job of work a bit easier. So as a librarian and the tech coordinator, I get the opportunity to kind of work with teachers, and then in some cases I even get to go into classes and teach with teachers. And so really a fun thing to do in my job is to bring about this new technology. And so as you can see from my activities here, I have quite a few that I've created for teachers, and then there's some sessions or activities that I've created for my own classes with kids. And so the one I want to show you was one that went really well, was really exciting and kind of fun for the teacher. And what it was we initially were working with 9th grade students and looking at the differences between searching Google and then using AI to search. And we wanted it to be a high stakes kind of thought process for the kids. And so what we decided was they would be, this is a health class, I should have said that. We decided that they would be looking at a supplement or some type of health related research, and really something that they might actually be considering. So we had them kind of think about that a little bit, and we had them kind of walk through this process of, all right, maybe I'm going to take something like, I'm thinking about taking something like protein powder, or I'm thinking about taking something like creatine or B vitamins. And we said, all right, so once you have that in your mind, you're going to work with Flint to debate whether or not you should be looking at the research that results from an AI search or the research that results from a search engine like Google. And what we did in the background was we set up basically the session so that we gave it a few resources. We told it that the students were never to be able to just give an answer. They had to always support that answer with some type of research, and then go into this debate basically with Flint about what would be the right resource. And it was just really amazing. So I want to show you, first off, one of the things that I think is so powerful about Flint is the overarching engagement here. Essentially, this tells me how my class did. Gave us the strengths here, where many emphasize the importance of verified medical sources and professional credentials. So as they got going, they realized, maybe I need to talk to a doctor rather than just be searching on my own to take something. Again, high stakes, right? So it was really fun in that way. And then the recognition of accuracy. That was one of the things that we were hoping they would find and come across. And as they debated with Flint, they obviously did, and that was really good. Some things that came up though, even though we asked Flint to push them to not allow the students to make claims without support, you can see it was still fairly weak. And that's good for us to know. That way, when we build things in the future, we can think about that and maybe be a little more specific and detailed oriented for the kids. For this one, we didn't do the follow-up activity. I've done that in other classes, and it is very, very powerful. Just kind of really opens your mind to, what if we did this now to extend? That's where I see the most positive thing there. So you'll see here, the duration of how long they spent in there. We gave them up to 25 minutes. So really, most of them spent a good chunk of time in there working. You can see we're pretty high up there as far as the usage. We did this in actually 3 classes. So I got most of my 9th graders through it. And when you look at some of these, you look at Alexander's here. And so here's what the kind of session looked like. Okay, welcome to the debate. Health supplements, skincare, drug effects, alcohol impacts, vaping, those kind of things. Task is defined to go ahead and choose your topic. They chose their topic, and then review research materials. To start, they're going to take that health concern and start defending which one they should use, AI or search engines. And so they make their choice. They even have the opportunity to listen here. Great choice. It goes back and forth and gives them like some of the specifics it knows. You can see where it was really detailed and specific as to what he needed to do. You're wrong. He got to disagree with it, which was really fun. And I think that was really just what I wanted to show you, was this is a powerful tool for making kids think.
Christopher shared that video. If you all want to review it again, it'll be in the slides that I'll share out after the session. But yeah, he also sent over another video talking about an example where they were working in an IB geography class, and usually students don't necessarily do the reading that you assign, so they had them go through Flint through a debate and kind of make a mock Socratic seminar in Flint. And yeah, that really had students engage with the reading, and then really made them more prepared for the actual conversation in class the next day. So that's an example of a homework sort of research assignment versus something like the one that I just showed you where they were doing it in class and yeah, doing research with Flint. But yeah, those were the examples I wanted to share. I know Sarah is also on this call, and I kind of voluntold her to share her experience with Flint and how she's been using it with the students as well. So yeah, Sarah, if you're ready, feel free to go ahead.
Hi, thank you. We didn't talk much about library stuff, so I'll just put in a plug for Flint for those kinds of things. It's been great for things like Battle of the Books, you know, uploading all of the questions, and then the kids can practice on their own, in addition to the group practices, book finders and things like that. There's some really good templates already done, so those are fun to explore. The thing that has happened for us in actually quite a short time, because we just finally got fully immersed this semester really, is that we moved from students kind of using it for the entry-level research skills of, you know, brainstorming questions and getting background information and those kinds of things. I would build a kind of a like a little activity that would be part of the LibGuide. So all the different resources that we would normally have were there, but then there would also be a Flint activity to help them get started with any kind of a research project. But what we're seeing now is that teachers they're using the Flint to kind of help students understand the discrete sections of the research process, you know, source evaluation and reading for main idea and you know, taking notes and those kinds of things. Those can be done as separate little activities. Now we're seeing teachers kind of stretch out the time that kids can be in the activity and start to have built-in checkpoints within the activity. So maybe it's a double block, and usually the kids would be searching on Google and kind of random for a whole block. With the Flint activity structured for, you know, that amount of time, it will ask them, you know, you've got a source, you know, how do you know it's a good one? And what's going to be your strategy for getting the information, and just kind of leading them through some of those steps in the process. The other thing that's happening that I'm super excited about, and this is happening in science, is that we're starting to see Flint as a whole class activity with a blend between what they're doing in Flint and what they're doing in the lab, or when they are getting something from Flint and then they go have kind of a peer feedback session, or talk to the teacher, or have an opportunity to present something. So it's almost like Flint is there for the whole class, for the whole lesson, and the student is going back and forth between interacting with Flint and then doing some kind of little experiment, back to Flint to talk about what happened. So we're really trying in our school to hold on to this human element. We don't want to get into this vicious cycle of, you know, the teacher creates the activity in Flint, the kid does the activity in Flint, it gets scored by Flint, and there's no people anywhere. And so I'm really excited to see this happening, where the Flint is kind of like a real guide on the side, as kids are actually also, you know, interacting with each other and the teacher and materials. So that's kind of what's been happening for us, and I can't say enough about this tool. We're absolutely loving it, and it's really making our teachers more and more creative. I will put into the chat on that note a gamified lesson that one of our science teachers did. Flint created the whole activity, but then the teacher put the parameters of the activity, the badge collection, the checkpoints, all of this kind of stuff into a website hosted on GitHub. I just thought it was super cool. I don't even 100% understand how he did it, but I just thought it would be fun for people to see. So I'll close there, but thank you so much, Lulu, for hosting this. It's great.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. A couple other things I want to touch on that we've had like a lot of conversations before. So I think like one of the cool things that you all had done at your school was you said you created a book matching kind of bot where students you uploaded like the list of the fantasy books or fiction books. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a little bit early days. It wasn't 100%. I did have some of my library kids test it out. But yes, I put the whole collection into Flint. It took some time because I had to do it in batches. But the idea was that the kids could actually, instead of searching the catalog, they could search with Flint, so that just because Flint knows more about, I don't know, some of the like read-alikes and things like that. So they could, tell Flint a little bit about what kind of book they were looking for and other things they'd read, and it just made it more of a conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, awesome. And I think Chris was asking if there's like a template for the battles of the book practice.
Yes, I do have a template. I haven't published it there yet, but I'll share the activity so you can see it. But yeah,
Okay.
one thing I learned, and Lulu and I were just chatting about this, when you make an activity, and if you want to share it to the template, if you feel like it might be helpful for another user to have a little guidance about what to put in there, how to customize it for themselves, if you go to the manual side, that's where it will let you put the directions in.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. The summary will show like in the template. Let me.
And also on the manual side, you can change the font. The font is kind of big sometimes, so you can shrink that down if it bothers you.
Yeah, exactly. I was just telling Sarah about how we should make that by default not so massive. But yeah, this part where it like gives you an overview of what the activity is doing, that's like in the manual settings. It's called the summary. So you could ask it, or you can update it in the manual settings, or you can ask it to update the summary through the chat to give it more information about what that template will do. But yeah. Oh, Chris, were you saying that you wanted to share about how you uploaded a bunch of content into Flint?
Yeah, sure. I have used another product to do this, and I wanted to know if this would work with Flint, but it sounds like it does work. I created like an AI persona that greets students, and in the instructions, it knows to re-greet after a kid is finished. So the next person who comes up will get greeted and get asked for their interest. And I just uploaded the PDF of my exported Destiny Follett catalog, shelf list, basically. And it sounds like that's just what Sarah did. But I was able to upload it with one PD, a PDF. Would that be possible with Flint? I have about 1,000. I'm sorry, I have about 6,000 books.
Do you know about how long the PDF is?
No. Is it length or is it megabytes?
I wish I think I unfortunately don't know the megabytes count, but
Okay.
yeah, you might need to break it up into like a couple PDFs, just like
Okay.
cut it and then
Sure.
put it into Flint. But yeah, that should work.
And just like what Sarah said, it's been so successful. My numbers of borrows have really gone up because I've asked teachers who bring their kids to the media center if during the time that they're doing their activity, could I borrow 5 at a time and bring them over to I have a kiosk set up. And I teach them about it, and they love it. Even when they're disappointed that we don't have a certain author, I've taught them to say, well, do you have books that are like what so-and-so writes? And it can do that. And so they continue to find books that excite them and they want to check out. It also gives in the instructions I gave it gives the call number so they can go find a book. So anyway, it's been great. And I would love to do this with Flint.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and I think like with Flint, the students could all be doing it asynchronously, I guess, if that makes sense. So yeah, you can set up like a laptop station where they can come interact with it, and then every student can just like start a new session, a new chat session. Yeah, or you can say like, hey, here's like a QR code to the link, and they could scan it with like Flint kind of works on
Yeah,
phone.
I just set up a kiosk just to make it flashy, so I put up signs and stuff like that to get their attention. But you're right, I could just post it on our library site as well.
Yeah, more touch
Thank you.
points.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, awesome. We have a couple minutes left. Was there anything else anyone else wanted to share? Yeah, go ahead, John.
Well, actually, it's more of a question. I noticed that a lot of the interaction that you had with Flint was natural language and wasn't necessarily within like a standard star prompt format or whatever. I've been, just as we've been talking, I've been sort of tooling with an activity because one of our struggles has been both with just using any of our tools, not just Flint, but like our databases and whatnot, is breaking kids out of the habit of Google style, like, I need information about X kind of thinking.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if anyone had created any templates to sort of help refine that kind of prompt behavior within Flint, if there was something pre-existing. Again, I've been tooling with something as people have been talking, but if something has shown success, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, there is this one that I like very briefly had touched on, but it's like a activity that is built to be a coach for helping students figure out like how best to prompt AI. Because with Google, I mean, you put in like a question and it gives you like a bunch of different options. So like if the first one or second one isn't right, then like the students can kind of deduce what would be right from like maybe later responses. Maybe.
I call Google Regina George. She's your frenemy. She smiles in your face and stabs you in the back while trying to sell you something. So, but I was curious, especially within like the research component, is this more just like prompt engineering or prompt construction generally? Is there something that's more specific to like research, or will this work, do you think?
I think this one's more general, so you could take it and like make it more research focused maybe, or even just like by looking at like how this interaction plays through it. Sometimes templates are like good for inspiration, sometimes they're good for like directly using. So yeah. But yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, and Silky.
Just turn it on. Okay, so I have really used Flint for my extended essay kids because like most of them are really struggling with like really formatting their citations. They have sometimes they're using like in work cited they have MLA, but like their in-text citation is APA. Some of the kids are, we know how they are. So like I created an activity where they could just put in their citations, which they've already created a works cited, and check the formatting and then understand what was wrong. So it's basically thinking about what went wrong with their citation, why it's not working, and why the teacher is not really happy with what they have provided. So I think it's a good way for them to reflect on what kind of resources they are using, evaluating it at the same time, and also formatting, because for them I feel it's important. And another thing which worked really well with me is like I created an activity for refining the research questions. I had to give like a 1-page long prompt because I really didn't want the kids to get a ready-made research question, but at every step it was like helping them critically think. And after 4 attempts, I prompted Flynn to say that I think you should be talking to your supervisor or your EE coordinator if you're really having a problem. So no way. It took me a lot of time, a lot of effort to create that foolproof prompt, but I think it worked. And some of the kids were able to refine because I added the limiters in it, and I added a lot of stuff which the kids actually need to know about refining the research question. So I think some ways it works beautifully. But definitely you have to give it a very solid prompt which will allow them to like think critically and not because kids were asking, can you just give me the research question and not ask me so many more questions? But then Flip said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Can you just go back, refer to this? So I think it worked well.
That's awesome, Silky. If you have if you're willing to publish those as templates or already have,
Yes, I can. Like I'll publish the templates, and also like I can also share the prompt that I set up. It's a big prompt. With, of course, Flint. Yeah, I can do that. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I'll grab that from you after this and then I can put it in the slides and then share out the slides to everyone. Yeah. Great. Yeah, thank you all so much. I have like a couple final things just to touch on. So yeah, next week we have a session for curriculum coordinators. Don't know how many of you all will find this relevant, but kind of looking at how Flint can be used outside of like an individual classroom for like larger picture planning sorts of things. Yeah, I'm still kind of in the process of figuring out what exactly the focus of this one will be. But if you all have any suggestions, let me know. But yeah, and then here I have like a QR code for our Campfire calendar. You can subscribe to it so that you're notified of when a new session is posted. And then we do have a Facebook group if you all want to continue the conversation there. Yeah, we try and encourage teachers to go in there and ask questions. Our team is pretty active in there too, so we can also answer any additional questions that might pop up after this. But yeah, the recordings will be posted on our website. For those of you all who are here, you'll get an email when it's live. And in that email, I'll also add the link to the slides as well. Great. Yeah, glad to see that people are sharing some contact information in the chat. But that's all I had. If you all have any final questions, I have some time to stay on. But yeah, thank you all for coming. Thank you, everyone.
Lulu,
Yeah, Jackie.
I have a quick question, just because this relates very closely to something, and I apologize, I'm sharing an office with somebody else, but and I didn't catch his last name, but I think it was Christopher. He was one of the videos that you showed.
Yes.
Is there any way that I could find out if he could share that AI versus search engine for health research databases? That relates very strongly to something that I'm doing with my health classes because I'm a librarian and the health teacher. So is there any way that, do you know, has he shared that somewhere or would he be willing to share that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he has yet, but I can check and I can send it to you as well.
Okay, yeah, I mean, even if he just gave me a clue on how, like his outcomes for that and like the basics of what his prompt was, I'm sure I can figure it out myself, but it would be great to just have the full thing if he's willing to share.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll check with him and put it in the slides, but I'll also email you once I.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. This
Yeah,
was great.
thank
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.